Yo, Narukami, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How's it going, Makoto?
Boring as usual. Anyway, is Ren available for communication at the moment? Cause I got something to bring at the table.
Yo, did I just hear somebody call for me?
Yeah, it's great to see you too, Ren.
Yeah, as soon as I felt my phantom senses tingling, I knew that it was one of you guys trying to get in touch with me. So I rushed to my laptop to answer the call.
So what do you guys want to talk about?
How about we talk about my ideas for the next Persona 5 spin-off game?
Absolutely not.
Damn it!
Yeah, I'm with Makoto in this one. All this Persona talk is old shit, don't you think?
No shit taken there, you.
Then what do you want to talk about, you?
Are you asking me?
No, I meant to ask you, Narukami.
Me? Well, I do have something in the back of my mind.
We're all ears.
Oh, really? What's on your mind, you?
There's this video game franchise that's been around for 28 years and counting.
28 years?
Yes. The franchise I'm thinking of is Pokémon.
What the fuck is a Pokémon?
Atlas did it first with Megami Tensei from 1987, which is like 37 years ago.
Is it the one with the gotta catch 'em all slogan?
Yeah, I knew what he was about to bring up the moment he mentioned how long ago the Pokémon franchise made its debut. I've just found out about it ever since I've made my grand entrance at the Game Awards after receiving an invitation to become a playable fighter for Ultimate Smash Bros., which is totally worth it. Oh, and the Phantom Thieves were there too.
Let's just save your story for another discussion, Ren. Anyway, word has it that people in Inaba have been getting into Pokémon recently. Everywhere I go, I see people playing Pokémon on their DSs. Even my cousin Nanako got attached to it very quickly.
Funny that you mentioned it. Me, my friends at the dorm, including Kotone, and everybody here in Iwatodai were into Pokémon last week. More specifically, Pokémon Black and White.
Pokémon Black and White? No way, bro. That game has the best storyline, along with some questionable Pokémon designs.
I mean, yeah, bro, they're not all perfect by all means, but some of them are decent. Like the Purple Cat, which I heard was Kotone's favorite Pokémon.
Purloin? The kitty cat who used to dominate the competition by only using dive?
That's right.
Don't forget about Liepard. That Pokémon has a cool design.
Absolutely. Too bad their stats are really shitty, hence the reason why they've been excluded in future mainline Pokémon games going forward, but maybe not in spin-offs. Speaking of spin-offs, the last time we ever saw them was in Detective Pikachu Returns. As much as I am glad to see them again, I'm not a huge fan of their voices. But hey, that's just my opinion, so feel free to disagree with me.
My turn. I started with Pokémon X and Y, but I only went with Pokémon Y.
Pokémon X and Y were the first mainline games to make a jump to 3D. Aside from the Kalos region being the first of the 3 regions to be based on a European country, these games introduced a brand new fairy type, which is a welcome addition to the franchise as a whole. While a few features that were first introduced in those games would go on to become staples for future mainline games going forward, such as trainer customization, multi-directional movement, and name changes. Some of them are exclusive to those games and the Gen 3 remakes, but not anywhere else.
For being the first 3D Pokémon games, they're pretty decent. Unfortunately, the story is just mid, but at least the music is great, especially the remixed versions of the tracks from Black and White. Also, can I just point out that Kalos Route 1 is just a fucking straight road with no tall grasses? Like, really? It's literally the first and last Pokémon game to have a route so short that it takes less than 10 seconds to cross without any wild Pokémon stopping you dead on your tracks. The remixed version of the Sky Arrow Bridge from Black and White is a bop, though.
Well, there's also Galar Route 1 from Pokémon Sword and Shield, which is also a straight road, but with a few improvements. Firstly, it's a bit longer than Kalos Route 1. Lastly, it has a side path that leads to the wild area from the east, which also leads further down to the straight road.
Oh, did I just say a moment ago about people playing Pokémon on their DSs? Sorry. Just wanted to clarify that they were actually playing Pokémon on their 3DSs. Pokémon X and Y were released a year after Black and White 2.
Honestly though, Pokémon Black 2 and White 2 are the best Gen 5 games, period, as it takes place 2 years after the first Black and White games. This is a sequel done right. Need I say more other than a plethora of changes and improvements from Black and White?
Okay, well, it looks like we've got ourselves a Gen 5er who still raves on about how great the Gen 5 games were,
I am a force to be reckoned with.
and a Gen 6er who unironically skipped Gen 5.
Hey, just because I haven't played a Gen 5 game doesn't mean I skipped it. So fuck off with that, Ren.
So that means I'm the last person to talk about my Pokémon game.
Hold that thought, Ren. Before you tell us your Pokémon game, let's hear what Narukami has to say about X and Y.
Okay, fine, but make it quick.
Thank you. So Pokémon X and Y, as Ren stated earlier, was the first ever Pokémon game to make a jump to 3D. A huge departure from the 2D Pokémon games that we've all been used to since the first generation. These games introduced fairy-type Pokémon and its ninth evolution, Sylveon, which instantly became Nanako's #1 favorite Pokémon, with Pikachu being in the #2 spot. The biggest highlight of this France-inspired Kalos region is how Lumiose City is considered to be the largest area of all the mainline games. Hell, even the Prism Tower has a gym inside. But those are only the good parts. I heard some people say that those were the games that started the downward trend, where every mainline Pokémon game released becomes more repetitive, leans more on the easier side, and lacking its originality. However, I still enjoy those games. And Nanako too.
Nice to hear that you and Nanako-chan are enjoying the Gen 6 games, Narukami.
I've never played the Gen 6 games, but I just want to say real quick that Lumiose City will be the main setting for the upcoming Pokémon Legends ZA game.
Wait, Pokémon Z is real? When's it coming out?
Pokémon Legends ZA is set to be released in 2025, probably giving the developers more time to focus on quality over quantity.
Great! Oh yeah! Remember how I stated that Lumiose City is the largest area? Well, that title now goes to Mesagoza, the largest city in Paldea from Pokémon Scarlet and Violet.
Wait, what?
Scarlet and Violet did things very differently by ditching the traditional formula that we've last seen with Sword and Shield, all of which I've never played thankfully, and making the game entirely open world, which is a first for the mainline series of games. The selling point of these games is the non-linear progression, giving players the freedom to travel to whichever area in any particular order they want. Another positive is the amount of new Pokémon that this region has to offer, especially the starters. When the game and its starters were revealed to the public, people across the internet were quick to react by memeing Sprigatito to death. Thus, the hilariously dubbed Weed Cat was born. As for the negatives, those games have caused every player to suffer through the never-ending bugs and glitches, hence the reason why the developers had to release numerous patches in order to fix multiple technical issues. In other words, patch it with multiple bandages until it stops bleeding. Also, the Paldea region in its entirety feels really empty and soulless. Also, let's not forget about the DLCs. It wouldn't be a AAA game without those. If anything, I would rather play Legends Arceus instead. At least that game managed to reshape the formula perfectly.
Honest to God, bro. Legends Arceus is a very solid reshape of the old traditional formula. Literally everything about it was great. But Scarlet and Violet? They took what Legends Arceus did right, only to fuck it up completely. The Gen 9 games are what drove the quality of the Pokémon games off the cliff.
One bizarre thing I found about Scarlet and Violet is that it's the first mainline Pokémon game to not only have Toby Fox compose parts of the music, but the end credits theme with lyrics. More specifically, Celestial, performed by Ed Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran in a Pokémon game. Dude, I love his music, especially his hit single Shape of You. And Toby Fox? That's the same guy who created both Undertale and Deltarune.
Okay, I think we've already dragged this on long enough. Ren, it's finally time for you to shine.
Hell yeah. My first Pokémon game is Sun and Moon.
Oh god, no.
You can't be serious, man.
What are you two talking about? They're the most critically acclaimed mainline Pokémon games of all time. The story is great. The island trials are a nice change of pace from the usual gyms, and it has over 800 Pokémon to catch. Also, the Alola Pokémon designs were spectacular. I mean, what even is there to complain about?
While the 7th gen Pokémon designs match the tropical-themed Alola region, which I 100% agree.
Thank you, Makoto Yuki.
These games were the first in the mainline series to introduce regional variant Pokémon, which is another staple for future Pokémon games to come, like Gen 6's exclusive Sky Battles and Mega Evolution. Gen 7's exclusive features include Z-Moves, a Battle Royal format, Poké Rides, the Festival Plaza, Poké Pelago, a QR scanner, and a freaking Rotom Pokedex.
Speaking of Z moves, they're an absolute blast to use in battles. Even Incineroar's malicious Moonsault is used for his final smash. It's so frickin' awesome.
Despite the fresh new changes from the previous gen Pokémon games, there have been complaints about Sun and Moon's dumbed-down kid-level difficulty.
Especially since Pokémon is mainly targeted towards a younger demographic, so we can't blame the developers for that.
Not long after the release of Pokémon Sun and Moon, Pokémon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, an updated version of the original Sun and Moon, was released to the world a year later.
That's the one I started with. I picked Ultra Sun as my first Pokémon game, only because of the Pokémon that didn't appear in the original Sun and Moon games. Even though the storyline is the same, the changes were only minor, like the inclusion of the Ultra Recon Squad. Other changes include the aesthetics, locations, gameplay, and version-exclusive Pokémon. New to Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon is Episode RR, which is accessible after completing the Alola League for the first time. And speaking of the Alola League, after defeating Alola's Elite Four members, the player secures its position on the champion's throne. But before they'd officially earn the title as Alola's first champion, they must face the final boss, which is Professor Kukui himself. Or how, if they're playing Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. This is an interesting change from your typical run-of-the-mill Pokémon League from the previous mainline games.
While it's true that the Gen 7 games were praised by critics and fans alike, those games have suffered from its flaws. For one, the cutscenes and dialogue were completely drawn out and are way too long. Another flaw is how the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon games are way too similar to its non-Ultra predecessors in terms of story. At first, I was hoping that Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon would be actual sequels to Sun and Moon, just like Black 2 and White 2. Unfortunately, my disappointment is immeasurable when Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon were released as remakes of Sun and Moon.
That didn't matter to me. I just like to keep it casual whenever I play a Pokémon game.
You're forgetting something, Ren.
Oh, right! One thing I have to nitpick about the Gen 7 games is that in Pokémon Moon and Ultra Moon, the time of day is offset by 12 hours. So, if the 3DS's clock is set between 6 a.m. and 5 p.m. in the real world, everything is nighttime in Alola.
All time differences aside, which starter Pokémon did you all go with? I went with Oshawott since the scallop on his stomach is also a blade, and Legends Arceus managed to put the blue otter back in the spotlight.
Me personally, I've gone with Chespin because of his spiny shell.
I chose Litten. He reminded me a lot of Morgana in terms of his appearance. But unlike Morgana, he evolves into a big, muscular cat.
You mean the same big muscular cat who got into Smash Ultimate?
Correct. And before we end it off here, what is everyone's take on Pokémon Sword and Shield?
Are we really doing this already?
They are easily the worst games ever!
Oh, so I start bringing up the Gen 8 games and you're already complaining about them. What the fuck?
They got rid of the National Pokédex and didn't include all of the Pokémon that previously appeared in Gen 7, only for some of them to be brought back by paid DLC. This is a total dick move from Game Freak.
But they only did this to save on resources. That's what the developer said in an interview.
I don't care.
And don't even get me started on that infamous tree model. The textures are so disgusting that they're hideous to look at.
I mean, yeah, it's worse, but at least it got a makeover in the DLCs.
The models and its animations for every returning Pokémon were ported straight from the 3DS games. Other than that, the Pokémon textures has received a nice clean upgrade from the low-quality 3DS textures, which is a huge plus. But that doesn't excuse the fact that they reused a bunch of animations from the Gen 7 games. Seriously. This is pure laziness at its finest.
While I can agree that the Gen 8 Pokémon designs were great, those games featured a wild area. It is the first and last mainline Pokémon game to have an extensive area that adjoins two cities from the north and south. These games also introduced Dynamaxing, a similar mechanic to Sun and Moon Z moves, except it turns your Pokémon into a kaiju, making them very powerful. And we can't forget about Gigantamax Pokémon.
The Gen 8 Pokémons are great to say the least. Even the legendaries are way past cool. Cinderace has an awesome design, not gonna lie, but it's nothing compared to my beloved Litten. But back to the games. The Galar region's UK setting is amazing, especially the gym battles taking place in what looks to be a gigantic soccer stadium.
Scarlet and Violet also has a similar mechanic called the Terrastall phenomenon, or Terrastallization. Like Dynamaxing, once per battle, trainers can Terrastallize their Pokémon, which in doing so changes its type, while also giving it a gem-like appearance. And returning from Sword and Shield are raid battles. They're basically the same thing, But TLDR, 4 trainers fight against a much stronger wild Pokémon.
Despite Sword and Shield receiving a lot of its praise for its new and innovative things like the Pokémon Camp, which is similar to X and Y's Pokémon Amy, Sun and Moon's Pokémon Refresh, and Scarlet and Violet's Picnic, the Gen 8 games didn't exceed my expectations. Besides, I'd rather play a Digimon game like Cyber Sleuth. The complete edition did come out the same year as Sword and Shield did.
Oh, so we're talking about Digimon now? Hell yeah, I love me some Digimon, even the virtual pets in its own anime. But back to Pokémon. What do you all think of Pokémon Red, Green, Blue, and Yellow?
These are the games that started the long-running franchise. Even though the gameplay feels pretty dated, the first generation of games are certified hood classics.
For anyone looking to experience the Kanto region, Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green are the best ways to get into, since they feature a playable female protagonist, the Sevii Islands, and tons of improvements seen in the Gen 3 games, which we will get to later on. There's also Pokémon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. But those are completely different games that we won't talk about.
Next is Pokémon Gold and Silver. They took the formula from the first-gen Pokémon games and improved upon it by adding tons of new features that would set the standard for every newly released Pokémon game, most of which I won't go into detail about it. This generation introduced pre-evolved versions of Pokémon from Kanto, including Pichu, who also made an appearance in Smash Bros. Melee as a fighter.
The best part about the Gen 2 games is how both Kanto and Johto are connected together. All players start at the Johto region. Then, after completing the Johto League, the player moves to Kanto and takes on that region's gym leaders. Afterwards, they travel to Mount Silver to face Red, the protagonist from the Gen 1 games, and the game's final boss. Those games are perfect sequels to the Gen 1 games. But if we're talking about which version of the Gen 2 games to start with, it's Pokémon Crystal. This is the definitive version of Gold and Silver that adds an option for a female protagonist, along with other changes in terms of aesthetics, locations, gameplay, and the storyline.
As for the remakes, Pokémon Heart Gold and Soul Silver are spectacular with so many quality of life changes from Gen 4, and the option to switch between the original Game Boy soundtrack and the remixed soundtrack. Of course, there's this pedometer device called the Pokewalker. I don't know why it exists, but it's there since it came bundled with the game. Just like how the GBA's wireless adapter came bundled with both Fire Red and Leaf Green.
Moving on to the third generation of games, and the best ones yet, we have Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire. They're the first 2D Pokémon games with an advanced graphical leap from the 2-bit Game Boy to the 32-bit Game Boy Advance. Unlike the last 2 generations, the Gen 3 games were the first to incorporate some new things that would then be carried over to newer Pokémon games, including, but not limited to, more specialized Pokeballs, abilities, natures, ribbons, and best of all, double battles. Exclusive to Ruby and Sapphire are Pokémon contests, a berry blender, and underwater areas, which also appeared in the Gen 5 games. But the best Gen 3 game out of all of them is Pokémon Emerald, which incorporated the changes from the Gen 1 remakes, while also changing and refining things from the original Ruby and Sapphire, like the storyline and everything else that are too many to list.
Pokémon Emerald, in my opinion, is the most goated game to date. The most memorable part of the story is how Rayquaza was able to stop Groudon and Kyogre from fighting.
Imagine if Groudon and Kyogre are like a parent couple that started an all-out war by arguing with each other, and Rayquaza as a peacekeeper who would forcefully tell the two to shut the fuck up and not start another argument again.
But the biggest highlight of Pokémon Emerald is the Battle Frontier, which replaced Ruby and Sapphire's Battle Tower. It is the second of the battle facilities, with the first being Crystal's Battle Tower. When entering the Battle Frontier for the first time, the woman at the entrance would upgrade your trainer card into a Frontier Pass. In the Battle Frontier, there are a total of 300 trainers that the player can encounter. Previously, Ruby and Sapphire's Battle Tower had 100 trainers, while Crystal's Battle Tower only had 70.
The GBA Pokémon games are great, and so too were the remakes. Pokémon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire not only managed to inherit tons of mechanics from generations 4 to 6, but also included some new elements like new characters, cosplay Pikachu, Groudon and Kyogre's primal reversion forms, an Eon flute that when played summons Latios or Latias to soar above Hoenn, the Pokénav Plus, the ability to wear the new Devon Scuba Gear or Go Goggles accessory, the inclusion of both Magma and Aqua suits, the Scuba Diver and Free Diver trainer classes, and finally, the Delta episode. Like all the other remakes, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire changed a lot of things from the GBA games, like Brendan and May with their different attires. A redesigned Hoenn Pokédex that resembles the OG horizontal Game Boy Advance system. A completely different intro sequence that blows the original GBA games out of the water. And everything else that are too many for me to list.
Too bad the Battle Frontier from Pokémon Emerald didn't make a return in the remakes.
At least the Battle Maison from X and Y is here, considering the fact that Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are based on the mainline Gen 6 games. Of course, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are built on top of X and Y's game engine, just like how Emerald is built on top of Fire Red and Leaf Green's engine, which are heavily modified versions of the Ruby and Sapphire engine.
And the last few games that we'll cover is Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, as they're the first games in the mainline series to be released on a dual-screen handheld, the DS. Diamond and Pearl takes advantage of two separate screens, with the top screen being the main playing area and the touch screen as the Pokétch, a multifunctional device similar to the Pokégear from Gen 2, the Pokénav from Gen 3, and the Seagear from Gen 5. Returning from Gen 2 is a day and night system, a feature that is absent from both the Gen 3 games and the Gen 1 remakes.
The Gen 1 games didn't originally have a day and night system as well as a real-time clock. The Gen 3 games, however, do have a battery-based real-time clock, a feature that all players are forced to set it up at the start of the game. During gameplay, some clock-based functions may occur, such as the water level in Shoal Cave changing every 6 hours, Eevee being able to evolve into either Espeon during daytime hours or Umbreon during nighttime hours, and keeping track of planted berries. Unfortunately, there's no way to change the clock.
Since the original DS and DS Lite feature an extra slot for backwards compatibility with the GBA games, the Gen 4 games, including the Gen 2 remakes and a few spin-off games, included a feature to communicate between a DS game and a GBA game. This is what's known as dual slot mode. As interesting as this is, the dual slot mode feature didn't carry over to the newer games since the GBA slot was retired for both DSi and 3DS models.
The newest feature in Gen 4 is the ability to connect the DS to Wi-Fi, thus allowing players to battle and trade with anyone across the globe. Diamond and Pearl were the first to utilize it, with Black 2 and White 2 being the last, with the official servers shutting down 2 years later.
Kind of ironic how the official Nintendo Wi-Fi connection servers have closed its doors 2 years after the Gen 5 sequels were released.
Then there's another service called Nintendo Network, which was launched in the beginning of the same year as the Gen 5 sequels, only for it to be shut down 10 years and 4 months later.
Most games that are released on the 3DS and Wii U makes use of the Nintendo Network service for online play, including the Gen 6 and 7 Pokémon games. 6 years later, Nintendo Switch Online existed.
We don't talk about Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah, I mean the fact that you need a subscription to use those online features in a certain number of games, that's just, how do I put this bluntly? Really stupid.
Yeah, if anything, I'll take PC gaming any day now. At least it doesn't require a single yen to enjoy online gaming.
Anyway, the Pokémon contests from Gen 3 makes a return for Gen 4 as Super Contests, which is an expanded version of the format. Also returning from Gen 3 are the items that increases a Pokémon's condition, except this time, it's a Poffin. Poffins are the same as Pokéblocks from Gen 3. Like making Pokéblocks with a berry blender, Poffins can be cooked using a Poffin making machine, which can be found in a Poffin house.
Every newly released mainline Pokémon game comes with new Pokémon, including the legendaries, but in the case of Eevee, this fluffy boy can evolve into either Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon when exposed to one of the 3 stones. 1 generation later, 2 new Eeveelutions, Espeon and Umbreon, were introduced, which Eevee can evolve into one of them during day or night with the power of friendship, or with the sun or moon shards in the bag. It didn't take long than 2 generations for Leafeon and Glaceon to make their debut. Unlike previous Eeveelutions, if Eevee were to increase his level while standing near a moss rock, the fluffy boy would evolve into a leafy boy. Or if he's near an ice rock, he evolves into an icy boy. Or you could just expose it with a leaf stone, or an ice stone instead. Another 2 generations later, Sylveon took the stage as the 9th Eeveelution, which the fluffy boy must know a fairy-type move as well as the power of friendship in order to evolve into the fairy boy. There are currently 8 Eeveelutions as of today. 9 if you include Eevee.
Of course, every single evolution has a gender ratio of 7 males to 1 female. No idea why, but it is what it is.
A year after Diamond and Pearl, Pokémon Platinum was released. This game is considerably the definitive version of Diamond and Pearl, with numerous changes and additions, such as the increased battle and surfing speed, Min and Giratina's new forms, 5 new Rotom forms, the Wi-Fi Plaza, a Versus recorder, an email system for the global trade system, the Distortion World, and more.
Like most iconic Pokémon trainers, Cynthia, the first female league champion in Pokémon history, would appear in later games including the Gen 2 remakes, then the Gen 5 and 7 games, and 2 spin-off games. You know shit is about to get real the moment you set foot in Caitlin's villa from Undella Town, where you'd find Cynthia during spring or summer. This is, in my honest opinion, one of the best moments in Gen 5.
And then we have the Gen 4 remakes, Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl.
It's mid.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Really? Is that all you have to say, Makoto?
Why, yeah. Is there a problem?
But those games hit the mark of being faithful to the original Gen 4 games. Even the NPCs have their chibi-like appearance in the overworld, which are nice.
Yeah, well, I don't care.
The new features are nice and all, but the remakes only contain Pokémon from generations 1 to 4, which is bullshit.
And they're not even developed by Game Freak. But instead, Elke did these remakes with the Unity game engine, so that's a first.
All right. I think I'm ready to call it here, because we've been yapping about Pokémon for about 25 minutes.
Yeah, I'm exhausted from all this Pokémon talk.
Can I at least say something about the Gen 5 games in more detail?
The stage is yours, Makoto.
Yeah, make it count, Makoto.
Okie dokie. Pokémon Black and White, along with its sequels Black 2 and White 2, are the last Pokémon games to use 2D sprites in a 3D environment. These games featured a huge graphical makeover from the previous mainline games, as well as the spectacular camera angles. Replacing the Poketch from Gen 4 is the Seagear, which would take me ages to explain what it does. Then, there's the Cross Transceiver, where a player can talk to other players through the DS's microphone, or optionally, the camera, if they're playing on a DSi or 3DS system. The Gen 5 games were the first to feature triple and rotation battles, which are then carried over to X and Y, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. The exclusive features of the Gen 5 games are the sprite animations in battles, seasons, the Entralink, a blacklist containing words that are deemed unsuitable, and the best one yet, the music that changes whenever a gym leader is down to his or her last Pokémon, or when a player's Pokémon is at 20% of its HP. The Unova region is heavily inspired by the United States of America, or more specifically, the state of New York, which is the first Pokémon region to not be based on a Japanese region. The Pokémon designs were interesting. Some good, others, well, I'll let you be the judge of that. The most interesting out of all Unovian Pokémon is Braviary, an evolved form of Rufflet. America had bald eagles, so the inclusion of these two birds are perfect for Unova. The Unova Link, an exclusive feature in the Gen 5 sequels, features a key system that, when unlocked, allows players to change the game's difficulty, switch between 2 exclusive cities, and change which legendary giant will appear in the underground ruins. Black 2 and White 2 are the only games to offer a choice of difficulty to the player, a feature which didn't carry over to newer mainline games. The other 2 features of the Unova Link are Memory Link and Nintendo 3DS Link.
The Nintendo 3DS Link feature allows players to transfer Pokémon that are obtained from Pokémon Dream Radar to Black 2 and White 2. A feature that is similar to Gen 4's dual slot mode.
Returning from Gen 3 are underwater areas. Unfortunately, it only has one, which is the Abyssal Ruins. Unlike the many underwater areas in Hoenn, Unova's underwater area didn't have any wild Pokémon or trainers.
Technically speaking, the Gen 5 games didn't intend to include any of the wild Pokémon or trainers in any underwater area, including the Abyssal Ruins. But it is possible to modify the Gen 5 games by inserting a single wild Pokémon inside the Abyssal Ruins. In-game, the player can trigger a battle sequence by interacting with an inserted Pokémon. However, you will begin to notice that something is completely off, like the grassy platforms inside a blue background. Hence, the idea for multiple underwater areas with wild Pokémon or trainers were scrapped entirely. And no, the marine tube from Black 2 and White 2 doesn't count since it's just a straight road but with NPCs and observable Pokémon.
Guys, it looks like Kalos Route 1 has just entered the chat. It said they took the 7.8 out of 10 too much water comment very seriously, that they had to stop including underwater areas in every newly released mainline Pokémon game going forward. I guess that explains why the rumored underwater battles in X and Y were scrapped.
It sucks since Alola didn't have a single underwater area. Kind of a missed opportunity for a Hawaiian-inspired region.
Aside from the abyssal ruins reminding me a lot of Tartarus, but with a limited number of steps, we have Castelia City. Castelia City is considerably the largest city in Unova that is home to hundreds of different crowds of people rushing around. Below the city are the sewers, something the Lumiose City from Kalos lacked.
I still prefer Kalos' Lumiose City over Unova's Castelia City, though.
At least it has a Game Freak building in Castelia Street, as well as the Castelia Gym in a conveniently named street called Gym Street.
The fact that you just said that makes me want to give the Gen 5 games a shot, because I'm itching to see what I've been missing out on.
I'd be a very happy emo boy if you did, Narukami.
Wait, really?
For real, bro, for real.
In the Gen 5 sequels, instead of Hilbert and Hilda, the protagonists from the first Black and White, Nate and Rosa takes on their roles as the protagonists. Also, the player starts at Espertia City instead of Nuvema Town.
The music in Accumula Town has its own piano and percussion tracks, which can be added by talking to a pianist and a drummer who are residing in a house northeast of town. This song is well known for being used in that one particular internet meme. That meme I'm referring to is the Fur It Walk meme.
Dude, I love the Fur It Walk meme! And I was surprised to learn that the Gen 7 games contained every single Pokemon's walking, running, floating, and flying animations. Though it's unclear as to what purpose those walk/run animations could serve, so of course they had to leave them in the cutting room floor. It didn't take long for the Gen 8 games to repurpose those unused animations for Pokemon Camp.
There are other places of interest in Unova like the Driftvale Drawbridge that connects both Driftvale City and Unova Route 5, Undella Town, along with its Bay Area on the east, Join Avenue, which debuted in the Gen 5 sequels, Pokestar Studios, which also debuted in the Gen 5 sequels, and Nimbasa City with the Rendezvous Ferris Wheel, Musical Theater, Big Stadium, Small Court, Battle Institute, and the Gear Station. The Gear Station has 8 train lines, with 7 containing the Battle Subway trains, and 1 leading to Anvil Town. Speaking of, the Battle Subway is similar to the Battle Tower from previous mainline games. Just like the Battle Frontier from Emerald, Platinum, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver, there are a total of 300 Battle Subway trainers, which are divided into 2 courses, 110 for the normal course, and 189 for the super course.
The Battle Maison from both X and Y and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire also has 300 trainers.
Diamond and Pearl's Battle Tower also has 300 trainers, while Gen 7 has both the Battle Tree and the Battle Agency, which contain just 190 trainers. 202 if you include the 12 special trainers. Then there's the Battle Royal Dome, which only had 50 trainers. Meanwhile, Sword and Shield's Battle Tower has a total of 171 trainers. No battle facility in Scarlet and Violet, though.
Speaking of Scarlet and Violet, one final thing I'd like to mention is the Blueberry Academy from the Indigo Disc, which is the second part of the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero DLC. Why the fuck did it exist? The fact that it's located from the seas of Unova didn't make sense to me. Like, why?
At least they brought back those Pokemon that didn't make the cut from the base game, just like how they did for both Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra expansions for Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Never mind the fact that some of the starter Pokemon have finally returned, like Oshawott, who was previously absent from Sword and Shield. The guys over at Game Freak weren't able to include the remaining Pokemon that were previously cut from the Gen 8 games, Legends Arceus, and the vanilla versions of the Gen 9 games. Sure, the legendary Pokemon from the Gen 9 DLCs are cool, especially Ogerpon with her interchangeable masks, and Terrapagos with its Terrastyle and Stellar forms.
I think they should have included every starter Pokemon from the base game instead of locking them behind the paywall, especially my beloved Litten. It's bullshit that they thought it was a good idea to incorporate expansion passes for all future mainline Pokemon games. Have they not learned from the hashtag #BringBackNationalDex controversy?
To some degree, the fans were right to drop the bomb on both Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, but they have to understand that compromises had to be made when developing a mainline Pokemon game on the Switch. By the way, I'd like to take a moment to mention that despite Scarlet and Violet having the most memorable characters, as well as a great storyline with its own tender moments, the graphics were pretty lackluster compared to previous Pokémon games. If anything, I'll take any Pokémon game before Gen 8 any day now.
As long as you're including the Gen 4 remakes, then sure.
Excluding the Gen 4 remakes.
God damn it!
Yeah, sorry, Ren, but it's true.
Even Makoto agrees with me.
Yeah, and you should too, Ren.
Oh, look, it's the Pancake Boy.
Shut the fuck up, Blue Boy!
Ouch.
Anyways, we need to go now, Ren. Your friends are all waiting for you at the subway.
I'll be right in a jiffy, Akechi. Okay, guys, I have to go now. Have fun, you two.
Well, looks like it's just the two of us now.
Not quite. There's one more person that we're missing.
And that is me.
Yeah, her. Hey, Kotone, quick question. Which of these Pokémon games have you played?
Easy. The Gen 5 games. More specifically, Pokémon White 2.
Mine's Pokémon Black 2.
Cool. And what about you, Narukami? Which Pokémon game did you play?
I only played Pokémon Y.
Bruh!
Was it something I said?
No, not really. She's just mad that some people preferred the 3D era Pokémon games over the good old DS and GBA Pokémon games.
Well, damn. I must have got her there.
Okay, sorry guys. I just had to bring someone from Inaba with me.
Wait, when you said someone from Inaba, do you mean... Nah, fuck this. I'm out of here.
Wow, that was kind of harsh.
Tell me about it. That serves him right for skipping the Gen 5 games. He just couldn't handle the power of Adachi.
Figures. So now that you're here, is there anything you'd like to share with us?
There is, actually. Have you ever played or heard of those ROM hacks and fan games? Because I'm into those sorts of things.
Why, yeah, tell us more.
I figured you'd say that. Okay, so where do I begin? Oh, right. Pokémon fan games and ROM hacks are a series of passion projects that are created by the community.
So now that the three kings are out of the picture, it looks like it's our turn. What do you all think of Pokémon?
What the fuck is a Pokémon?
Oh, and before I forget, happy Fuuka Friday, everyone!